The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples, "If your brother does something wrong, go and have it out with him alone, between your two selves. If he listens to you, you have won back your brother. If he does not listen, take one or two others along with you. The evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses is required to sustain any charge. But if he refuses to listen to these, report it to the community. And if he refuses to listen to the community, treat him like a pagan or a tax collector. I tell you solemnly, whatever you bind on earth shall be considered bound in heaven. Whatever you lose on earth shall be considered loose in heaven. I tell you solemnly once again, if 2 of you on earth agree to ask anything at all, it will be granted to you by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 meet in my name, I shall be there with them." The Gospel of the Lord. Today, the Word of God shows us how much Jesus was an expert in human relationships. He knew that there is no perfect relationship in the world, that our relationships are flawed, that we inflict pain, sometimes and very often without knowing to each other. But Jesus is opening our eyes that there is one important thing. A good relationship is love. As St. Paul told us in the second letter, in the second reading we had, you have only one obligation towards each other, that of love, loving each other. And Jesus gave also tips for the community of his time. The early Christians had a lot of disputes in the community with each other, and he offered them how they should treat these tips, these broken relationships or mistakes. We might often behave more as judgmental people to others who have inflicted some pain on us, or whom we considered wicked or evil. We are more judgmental towards others than seeking to heal the pain that has caused it. And so we need to remember that we are disciples of Christ. And this discipleship brings also the responsibility of being prophets. We are not only disciples in following Jesus, but the discipleship brings also the role of prophecy. We are prophets. How are we prophets? Prophet is not the one who foretells the future. The prophet is the one who tells the truth here and now, who is ready to read the present situation of an experience that he is going through, and he is ready to help out with love. We had the example of the Ezekiel in the first reading, when he was sent by God to admonish, to open the eyes of those God considered to be wrong in life. And he told him, go and open their eyes. We too are often faced with a situation when we would like to correct our own children, our own person whom we love, our neighbors, our people whom we meet at the place of work, and we don't know how to do it. The best way to do it is to behave as true prophets as to Christians. Jesus is calling us today to live this responsibility that we are asked to live, that we should be witness of the love of God. As I said, Paul tells us that love is the one thing that cannot hurt your neighbor. That is why it is the answer to every one of the commandments. So the best way to correct any person whom you feel that he is in the wrong way of living is not by judging him, is not by gossiping, is not by telling others about his way of living, but by approaching him with love. If he can hear your good advice, then you have won someone to life and to God. And that is the way of treating these experiences according to the tips Jesus told us to do. And then, of course, we have other ways of dealing with these sometimes very unfortunate circumstances that we find ourselves, especially with people who we might have hurt and whom we have offered our apologies and our forgiveness, and yet they remain closed and adamant not to come to speaking terms with us. This is a sad situation, but we do what we are obliged to do. We offer our olive branch, and we offer our forgiveness and love, and then we shall pray for everyone to look into his own responsibility towards life. Definitely, Jesus told us that we cannot live without good relationships. Definitely, we cannot live without life, without love. Definitely, we cannot live without mercy. Mercy is the underlying message that Pope Francis is giving in the church today. It is past the time when the church is pointing her fingers towards the sin of others, towards the bad life or evil that exists in the world. But the church today looks into herself, looks the sin that she also has, as human beings we all have, and try to be merciful to each other and be compassionate to each other. This is the way forward to bring peace in the world. First, peace in our lives, and then peace to our community, and peace that overflows to others in Malta, in the world where we live. This is our responsibility as disciples of Christ and also as prophets of God. I ask you to reflect for 1 minute. We close our eyes now. We all need to reflect on this message of the Word of God, and then we read the prayer afterwards. Let's read together the prayer on the screen. God of my hardened heart, I beg that you might soften me enough to hear the beating of my own heart. Hearing, may I then pulse with the beat of the heart of those with whom I live and work and play. Help me to have the courage to go to my sisters and brothers with whom I have difficulty, those who have injured me, intentionally or not. Let me speak to them with love, tell them of my pain, and wait attentively to hear what they have to say to me. Give me the grace to accept them as they are, and the strength to be forgiving. Amen.